Hi everyone, I'm Brian Hetrick, and today I'd like to show you how to grow the tray sprouts. Tray sprouts include things like wheatgrass and pea shoots and buckwheat and sunflower. Now when you're growing in trays, you can grow in large trays like this, 17 by 17 inch square, or you can grow in rectangular trays like this. This is a 10-inch by 20-inch standard nursery flat. You'll find this at any garden nursery center, at a Home Depot or a Lowe's. And when you can also grow in these 9-inch by 9-inch square trays, just whatever size tray you choose to grow in, make sure that your trays have holes in the bottom of them. Some trays are sold without holes, and that's for a different purpose. Now, the tray sprouts, you need to have good seeds. So the best source of seeds is a good, reputable sprouting house, like True Leaf or like the Hippocrates store, or you can get your seeds from Got Sprouts in West Palm Beach. They will ship to you, or at a place like Universal Living Sprouts. Seeds do have a shelf life. Seeds are susceptible to time, temperature, humidity, and bugs. So you want to make sure your seeds are fresh, and you want to make sure that they're stored in a good, cool, dry place. You can transfer your seeds, if they come in plastic bags, into a 1-quart wide mouth mason jar like this in order to keep your seeds as dry as possible. These mason jars have a gasketed lid, so that will seal the jar for you. And keep them in the pantry, or better yet, if you have space, keep them in the refrigerator, and they will last much longer. But don't put them in the freezer. The freezer has a defrost cycle that it goes through on a regular basis. And that defrost cycle will occasionally bring the temperature inside the freezer above 32 degrees for a few minutes, and then back down below 32 degrees, which will cause frost to build up on your seeds. And the same reason why we get frost on our frozen peas if you leave them in there too long. And that frost will turn into water during the defrost cycle, and that will cause the seeds to go bad early. So depending upon the temperature that you keep your seeds in, that will dictate the shelf life of your seeds. There's a book called Growing Your Own Living Foods, and in chapter 5, there's a chart that will tell you how long your seeds will last depending upon the type of seed and also the temperature where you keep your seeds. So let's grow a tray of wheatgrass, shall we? Now, in order to start with the wheatgrass, we first have to choose the size of the tray that we're going to be using. I'm going to grow in this 9-inch by 9-inch square tray. You can get this tray also from the Hippocrates store, and they will ship to you as well as your seeds. Now, for a 9-inch by 9-inch tray like this, you're going to need to start with 1 cup of red hard winter wheat berries. So they also make a white wheat. They make a spring, summer, and fall wheat. And they make a red wheat. The best seeds are red hard winter wheat berries. They seem to work the best. Now, for a tray this size, we'll need to start with 1 cup of these red hard winter wheat berries. And we're going to germinate them before we plant them. So for germination, you can use one of the sprouting vessels, such as a sprouting bag like this, or you can use the Easy Sprouter like this. Now in this case, I'm just going to return to my favorite sprouting vessel, which is a 1-quart wide mouth mason jar. And the purpose of the sprouting vessel is to simply make soaking and rinsing your seeds during the germination process convenient. So I pour my 1 cup of red hard winter wheat berries into my mason jar, and then I'm going to add fresh filtered room temperature water, at least 3 parts water to 1 part seed. So I fill the jar almost all the way to the top. And then I'm going to place a sprouting lid on top of the mason jar in place of the regular lid that comes with the jar. And a sprouting lid is threaded to fit exactly in place of a standard lid on a mason jar, except that it has holes in the top. And I let it soak for 8 hours. At the end of the 8-hour soak time, then I simply invert the jar to drain the soak water off, and then I return the jar upside down to my drain pan or to the base of the sink, or you can keep it at a 45-degree angle in a dish rack. And I'm going to rinse 3 times over the next day and a half. So 12 hours later, I'm going to add water for the first rinse. Just pour the water right through the holes in the lid. Fill the jar about halfway full, switch it around a little bit to make sure all the seeds get covered. And then immediately invert the jar to drain the rinse water off. And return the jar upside down to the drain pan. So I rinse 3 times over the next day and a half. And the purpose of rinsing is to keep the seeds hydrated, but we don't want to soak them anymore after the initial soak time. Now we're just rinsing. And this rinsing will create a small layer of water around each and every seed. It's called a boundary layer. And that's just enough water to hydrate the seeds every 12 hours or so without drowning them. And after 36 hours of rinsing like this, your seeds will have a tiny little white nub off to one side. That's the root. That's the plant beginning to emerge from the shell. And that's the perfect stage for planting. So I'm going to prepare my planting tray with 100% organic potting mix. So this is not a potting soil, it's not a topsoil, and it's not compost. Those are different products. For growing wheatgrass and your other tray sprouts, you want to use 100% organic potting mix. A potting mix is a blend of peat moss, vermiculite, perlite, dolomite, maybe some coconut chore, and it's designed to be light and fluffy, but also be able to retain just enough water for the delicate little seeds to get started and not have to fight through the tough soil that you get with some of the more mature soils. So I'm just going to place a very small amount into my tray, just so I can make a layer about a ½ inch thick. And I'm spreading my potting mix out to the 4 corners of the tray, nice and even. So these trays are about 2 1/4 inches high. So you fill the tray with just enough so that it has about 1/4 of the tray is full. So that'll take about, for a tray this size, a 9-inch by 9-inch square, that'll take about 2 cups of potting mix. And I'm picking out any sticks, any rocks, I'm breaking up any clumps to create a nice, even seed starting bed. The next step is I'm going to take a second empty tray and place it on top and lightly compress my potting mix. I rotate the tray 90 degrees and push down again. And the next step, using my misting bottle, I'm going to lightly moisten the surface of the soil. So you don't have to get the tray dripping at this point. I just want to moisten the surface of the soil so that when I spread my germinated seeds out onto the soil, if the soil were dry, then it might suck some of the moisture out of the seeds. We don't want that to happen. Now we're ready to plant. So I'm going to take my germinated wheat berry seeds out of the mason jar. And if you start with 1 cup of dry seeds prior to soaking, prior to germination, it will swell to about 1.5 cups. That's the perfect amount for a tray this size. So I empty the entire contents of the mason jar into the tray, and then I'm going to lightly spread the seeds out to the 4 corners of the tray, just so they're touching side by side, not piled one on top of the other. So I'm not going to press the seeds down into the soil, and I'm not going to cover with any soil. I'm just lightly spreading the seeds out to the 4 corners of the tray. And now, using my misting bottle, as the song says, I'm going to mist again. Mist it heavy. You don't have to get the tray dripping at this point. And then I cover with a second empty tray to trap some of the humidity inside of the tray like this. And I water twice a day for a total of 7 days. So 12 hours later, I'm going to remove the cover tray temporarily, and then using a sprouting lid as a diffuser, I'm going to hold the sprouting lid just above the surface of the seeds, and I'm going to pour the water into the sprouting lid while moving it side to side, forward and back. And I water heavy. You have to water it heavy until the tray starts to drip, like this. If the tray is not dripping, then you haven't watered enough. And then I return the cover tray, and then I'm going to place some spacers underneath my tray like this, so that my tray is not sitting in its own drain water, and also so air can circulate underneath the tray. Water it twice a day like this for a total of 7 days, every 12 hours. By the end of day 4, you will no longer need the cover tray. You can remove that and set it aside and continue watering twice a day for the remainder of the next 3 days. You see, it takes a few days for the roots to figure out which way is up, which way is north. When you first spread your seeds out in the tray, some of the roots will be facing up, some will be facing down, some will be facing sideways. The roots that are facing down will be protected by the moisture in the soil. The roots that are facing up and sideways could dry out very quickly were it not for the empty cover tray. By the end of day 4, your roots will have made a U-turn and will be down in the bottom of the tray, protected by the moisture of the soil. So you don't need any more after day 4. And this is wheatgrass on day 5. So I took the cover tray off yesterday, and you'll notice that at this stage, my wheatgrass roots have woven a root mat. So this is all natural root fiber here, and the roots actually entrain the soil, so there's no more separating the soil from a tray of wheatgrass once you grow it. Keep watering for a total of 7 days. Wheatgrass juice is nature's finest medicine. It is our signature elixir at Hippocrates Wellness. It's an extremely good source of chlorophyll, which both cleans your blood and it also builds your blood. It's a powerful detoxifier. And so we serve wheatgrass juice twice a day. We teach our guests to make their own juice and to drink it for the detoxification and also for the nutrient value in the wheatgrass. Pea shoots. We grow exactly the same way as we grow wheatgrass. When you buy your pea shoot seeds, You can use brown peas, you can use speckled peas, you can use green peas. Just make sure that the seeds that you're getting are purchased from a place with the intention of actually sprouting. So if you go to the supermarket, to Whole Foods or to Safeway or to Publix, you'll find peas like this in the store, either in the frozen section or in cans, or you might find them dry. The seeds that are sold in a supermarket situation like that are not sold with the intention of sprouting. They're actually sold with the intention of cooking. And so those seeds are probably not going to work for sprouting. Certainly if they're frozen or if they're cooked in a can, they're not going to work. But even the dry seeds will not work because they're probably too old. So you want to make sure you're getting your seeds from a good, reputable sprout house. And you have to make sure your seeds are fresh. So you soak your pea shoot seeds for 8 hours, and then you drain the soap water off. Rinse twice a day for a total of 3 days. And by the end of day 3, you'll see the little root beginning to emerge. Plant your pea shoot seeds in a 1/2 inch of 100% organic potting mix in your tray, and then cover with an empty tray. Water twice a day for a total of 7 days. You don't need the cover tray anymore after day 3. And pea shoots are a very good source of protein. On the Hippocrates program, we both teach our guests to eat the pea shoot sprouts in the lunch and the dinner buffet line, and also to juice your pea shoot sprouts. So the green juice that we serve at Hippocrates is cucumber, celery, pea shoot sprouts, and sunflower sprouts. This is our second signature elixir at Hippocrates, and we use that for detoxifying and also building with all of the nutrients. Buckwheat. Buckwheat seeds are available either in the shell or out of the shell. When they're in the shell, they're called unhulled, H-U-L-L-E-D. When they're out of the shell, they're called hulled. And hulled buckwheat seeds will be sort of ivory in color. When they're unhulled, they'll be brown in color. We use both at Hippocrates and also on the program at home. We use the hulled buckwheat sprouts for making like a buckwheat cereal groat for a breakfast cereal. But when you want to grow the buckwheat sprouts, they must be in the shell or unhulled. They'll be brown in color like this. And we grow buckwheat sprouts exactly the same way that we grow wheatgrass and pea shoots, except it takes 12 days to grow buckwheat. It's a little bit slower growing plant. So we need a little bit more soil. So instead of a 1/2 inch of 100% organic potting mix in the tray, we put 1 inch. So twice the amount. Fill the tray about halfway full of your potting mix. Soak the seeds for 8 hours, drain the soak water off, and rinse twice a day for a total of 3 days, at which point the little root will begin to emerge from the shell. That's the perfect stage for planting. Plant in 100% organic potting mix, spreading the seeds out lightly on the top surface of the soil. If you go too long with the rinsing process, with the germination process, the roots will get longer and longer and longer. And then when you try to spread your germinated seeds out, some of the roots may actually break off, and that will reduce your germination rate. So 3 days is the perfect amount of time for rinsing. And then you mist your soil, spread your seeds out, mist again, cover it with an empty tray, water it heavy twice a day for a total of 12 days. And you don't need the cover tray anymore after day 3. And by the end of day 12, you will have a beautiful tray of buckwheat sprouts, just like this. And buckwheat is a very good source of lecithin, among other things. Lecithin makes you thin. because lecithin helps with the metabolism of fat. And we only eat the buckwheat sprouts. We don't juice the buckwheat sprouts. With wheatgrass, we juice only, we don't eat it. With pea shoots, we both juice and we eat. Buckwheat, we only eat. And sunflower, we also juice and we eat it. Now for harvesting, you can use a knife or a pair of scissors and simply grab a clump of the buckwheat sprouts and using a sawing action, cut as close to the soil line as possible and harvest a handful of these buckwheat sprouts at a time. What you're not going to use right away, you can store them in the refrigerator for up to 7 days. You can just place it in a Ziploc bag, or you can use a Debbie Meyer's green bag. Debbie Meyer's green bags actually will double the shelf life of your sprouts in the refrigerator. So instead of 7 days, you'll get about 14 days in the refrigerator. Debbie Meyer's green bags, also known as Everett Fresh green bags, have a natural mineral called Oya, O-Y-A, which is a zeolite, which absorbs the ethylene gas given off by sprouts and by all fresh produce. Now, sunflower sprouts require a little extra special bit of attention. So I'd like to demonstrate how to grow a tray of sunflower sprouts. And you can use any one of the sprouting vessels, once again, the sprout bag or the mason jar or the Easy Sprouter. I'd like to demonstrate the Easy Sprouter because it has a couple of unique features that may be of interest to some of you. So there are 7 parts to the Easy Sprouter. There's a lid that has a solid component to it, and then there's a lid with holes in it. There is a measuring cup inside, and the measuring increments are marked right on the sides of the cup. The measuring cup also has a second function, and it serves as a domed lid when you turn it upside down because it has holes in the top. And then there's a cup that is sleeved inside the outer cup. And the inner cup also has holes in the bottom, and the inner cup has a small seed insert, which is designed for alfalfa seeds or broccoli or clover, and it snaps inside the bottom of the inner cup. Now for growing sunflower, we don't need the small seed insert, so I'm going to take that out and set it aside. And I'm going to sleeve the inner cup inside the outer cup like this. And then I'm going to start with 1 cup of these black oil sunflower seeds. And sunflower seeds, just like buckwheat, come both hulled and unhulled. And we use both at Hippocrates and on the program at home. When they're hulled, meaning the shell has been removed, they will be ivory in color, and we use it for recipes or for eating as a snack, like the Better Than Tuna recipe that we serve at Hippocrates. But when you want to grow these sunflower sprouts, they must be in the shell or unhulled. So they'll be black in color like this in the case of the black oil seeds. In the case of the white stripe seeds, they will also be black, only they'll have a white stripe on the outside. So I'm going to measure 1 cup of these black oil sunflower seeds and place them inside the Easy Sprouter. And then I'm going to add fresh filtered room temperature water. I fill the Easy Sprouter up to about 1 inch from the top, and you'll notice that the sunflower seeds float, unlike the other types of seeds we've looked at so far. And so it's important to make sure all the seeds get completely submerged in the water. So In the case of the Easy Sprouter, there's a trick. You can take the dome lid and turn it upside down and press down on your seeds like this, and then place the regular flat lid on top, and that this pushes the seeds down below the water line. That way you make sure that all the seeds get proper soaking time. We let it soak for 8 hours. At the end of the 8-hour soak time, I'm going to take the flat lid off. I'm going to take the domed cover off like this, and then I'm going to unsleeve the inner cup from the outer cup and drain the water off. And then I'm going to re-sleeve the inner cup inside the outer cup, only this time I lift and turn so that the inner cup sits up on this ledge about 1/2 inch. And then I'm going to place the domed lid on top like this. And this creates the chimney effect. You see, the inner cup has holes in the bottom of it, and by lifting and turning the inner cup so that it sits up on this ledge 1/2 inch, that creates an air gap between the inner cup and the outer cup, so air can get inside, down to the bottom, and then flow back up. So this cuts the amount of germination time in half. You see, seeds, as they germinate, they create a minuscule amount of heat. And as that heat rises in this raised domed lid, it draws more air through the bottom. And seeds, when they're exposed to more air, it's like having a turbocharger. It actually causes them to germinate much quicker. So instead of 3 days of rinsing, you only need to rinse for about 1.5 days. So 12 hours later, I'm going to take the domed lid off. I'm going to pour more water into my Easy Sprouter, and then I'm going to separate the inner cup from the outer cup, drain the rinse water off, and then reinsert the inner cup inside the outer cup. I lift and turn, and then replace the domed lid, wait another 12 hours, and my sunflower seeds will be ready to plant. So it only takes about 1 day of germination when you're using the Easy Sprouter instead of 3 days. It cuts your sprouting time at least in half. Rather, it cuts your germination time at least in half. So you'll see the tiny little white nub off to the sides of your seeds. That's the perfect stage for planting. So I'm going to prepare my planting tray. Once again with 100% organic potting mix. Just like buckwheat, sunflower takes a little bit longer to grow, so I'm going to add twice the amount of soil as I would use for wheatgrass or for pea shoots. So I fill the tray with about halfway full. So that's going to be about 1 inch of the potting mix, and I'm spreading the potting mix out evenly to the 4 corners of the tray, just lightly brushing the potting mix out with the back of my hand. I'm picking out any sticks, I'm breaking up any clumps, taking out any rocks. And then I'm going to use a second empty tray, placed on top like this, to lightly compress the potting mix. I turn the cover tray 90 degrees and press down again. And then I pre-moisten the surface of the soil using my misting bottle. So I mist it heavy. You don't have to get it dripping at this point. You just want to make sure that the surface of the soil is well moistened. Now we're ready to plant. So I'm going to take the entire contents of my germinated sunflower seeds out of the jar. So when you start with 1 cup of dry sunflower seeds, by the end of the germination period, you'll have about 1.5 cups of germinated seeds. So empty the entire contents into the tray, and then I'm going to lightly brush my germinated seeds out to the 4 corners of the tray, just a single layer thick, just so they're touching side by side, not piled one on top of the other. So if you get this right, you shouldn't see any gaps in the soil. It should just be a single layer thick. And then, once again, as the song says, I'm going to mist again. Mist it heavy. And then I'm going to cover, not with an empty tray, but I'm going to cover it with a weighted tray. So I'm going to fill my cover tray with more of this potting mix. So I fill my cover tray about halfway full. You can use more potting mix like this and then use this tray again later for growing. Or you can use something else as a weight. You can use bricks, you can use books, you can use rocks. And I water heavy twice a day for a total of 12 days. So I'm going to wait 12 hours, and after 12 hours, I'm going to remove the weighted tray, set it aside temporarily, and then once again, I'm going to use my sprouting lid as a diffuser. Hold it just above the surface of the seeds. Pour the water into the sprouting lid while moving the lid forward and back, side to side. The whole idea of using a diffuser is to not disturb the seed bed. Water it heavy until the tray starts to drip. Water it heavy until the tray starts to drip, like that. And then I'm going to return the weighted tray on top, and I'm going to place some spacers underneath my tray so that my tray is not sitting in its own drain water. So for my drain pan here today, I'm simply using an inverted Tupperware lid. You could also do this on a sprouting rack like this. This is called the Hydrosol rack. And I put my Tupperware lid at the very bottom to act as a drain pan. The Hydrosol rack is available in 2 sizes. One is the large size for 17 by 17 inch square trays, like this. The small size is designed for the 9 inch by 9 inch square trays like this. And the Hydrosol rack is available at the Hippocrates store, and they will ship to you. And there are 7 levels to the Hydrosol rack. The levels are more narrow at the bottom, and they get taller and taller as we get to the top. So there's 1 level for each day of the week. So the intention of the design is you start your sprouts on the bottom level, and then each day as you pull your tray out to water it, when you put it back 1 level higher. And so each successive day, there's more room for growth, and there's also more exposure to sunlight. So keep watering your sunflower tray twice a day for a total of 7 days. Water it heavy each time so that the tray begins to drip. If your tray is not dripping, you're not using enough water. So you have to prepare some kind of a drain pan, and maybe have a towel handy just to kind of wipe up any excess water that might splash out. By the end of day 5, your weighted tray will lift up in the air like this as your sprouts begin to grow. You see, sunflower sprouts individually, they're very tender, but as a team, they're very, very strong. And as they're growing, they will pick this weighted tray up in the air. When you see a gap between the bottom tray and your weighted tray, you don't need the weighted tray anymore. You can set that aside. Keep watering heavy for a total of 12 days. And this is sunflower sprouts at the end of day 12. And it's ready to harvest when it reaches the jointing stage. The jointing stage in the case of sunflower sprouts occurs at the top of the plant. So the 2 large leaves at the top of the plant are called the water leaves. When you see a second growth growing between the 2 water leaves beginning to emerge, that's the jointing stage. That's the perfect stage for harvesting for both eating and for juicing. That is the stage where the sunflower sprouts are the sweetest and when they are at the peak of their nutrition and when they're the most tender. If you let it keep growing much past the jointing stage, then the sunflower sprouts will begin to get more fibrous. They will get tougher, and they won't be quite as nutritious. So I'd like to talk a little bit about the ideal growing conditions for all of your sprouts. For all of your sprouts, you want a temperature between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit. That's between 18 and 22 degrees Celsius. You want a humidity less than 50%. Lighting, you want plenty of indirect sunlight, but never any direct sunflower, or no direct sunlight on any of your sprouts, including sunflower. So when the sprouts are in their early stages, they're just a tender baby, and they cannot handle the intensity of direct sunlight. So plenty of indirect sunlight and some artificial light to supplement. Full spectrum artificial light is best. And you want a little bit of air movement around your sprouts. You don't want still stagnant air. This means the best place for you to grow all of your sprouts is right in your kitchen for several reasons. Number one, the temperature is perfect in your kitchen. Most people find between 65 and 75 degrees to be a comfortable temperature setting for their homes. And that just so happens to be the perfect temperature for all of your sprouts. That means the running of the air conditioner in the summertime and the running of the heat in the wintertime. And the running of the air conditioner in the summertime will automatically keep the humidity below 50% because any excess moisture in the air will automatically condense on the evaporator coil of the air conditioner. The kitchen is also the best place to grow your sprouts because the light level in your kitchen is perfect. The kitchen is the best well-lit room in the house by design because that's where we prepare our food. You need about 12,000 lumens, 1,200 lumens. So the kitchen is also the best place to grow your sprouts because that's where we spend the most time when we're at home, when we're not asleep. And that's where the food is. So if you grow your sprouts in your kitchen, you will remember to water your sprouts. You remember to eat your sprouts. That means you don't want to grow your sprouts in the garage. You don't want to grow them in the basement. You don't want to grow them in the shed. You don't want to grow them in the closet or in the bathroom. You want to grow your sprouts in the kitchen. If you have the small hydrosol rack and you have 7 trays of sprouts going, you can grow enough sprouts for a family of 4 every week. So it doesn't take up a lot of space. The small hydrosol rack is about 1 foot square of kitchen floor space. I'd also like to talk a little bit about mold. So there are several reasons why mold can occur when you're growing sprouts. The first reason is temperature. The second reason is humidity. So if you grow outdoors, then chances are the temperature and humidity is not going to be appropriate most of the year. And so it's really hard to control the temperature outside. It's very easy to control the temperature indoors. So the number one reason for having mold with sprouts is the temperature is too high. The number two reason for having mold with sprouts is the humidity is too high. So remember, we want temperature between 65 and 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and we want the humidity to be less than 50%. Here in South Florida, the humidity is almost always above 50%, even in the wintertime outside. So you must grow indoors. And the third reason for mold is still stagnant air. If you think about the conditions where mold tends to get a foothold, where it tends to grow, it's where it's warm and where it's moist and where the air is still and stagnant. So you want a little bit of air movement. So a ceiling fan on low somewhere nearby is perfect. If the air conditioner is running or the heat is running, the movement of the air out of the vents is enough. If you see your sprouts moving as a result of the action of the fan, then the fan is too high. So you can also use a table fan or you can use a ceiling fan, just on low somewhere nearby. The next reason for mold is not using trays with holes in them in the bottom. So if you're using solid trays, then the water cannot drip out. And if you're not providing some kind of space between your tray and the drain pan, then your trays will be sitting in their own drain water. And then you can actually have too much moisture, and that can lead to mold. The final reason for mold is bad seeds. So you may have old seeds that simply aren't growing and they will just rot and then they will actually create some mold. Also, make sure that you're using potting mix, not potting soil, not topsoil, not compost. Those are too heavy, they're too thick, and they cannot drain well enough. They will retain too much water. When you're growing, wheatgrass in particular is very susceptible to mold. Make sure you have a very thin layer of the potting mix in the bottom of the tray. If you have too thick of a layer of even potting mix in the tray and you're growing wheatgrass, then the soil cannot breathe from underneath very well. And that can also lead to mold. So thank you all very much for your time and attention. This book, Growing Your Own Living Foods, Sprouting the Easy Way, is available on spirulinaguru.com. And this is well illustrated. There's lots of pictures, easy to follow step-by-step instructions for all different varieties of sprouts. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.